Story number 1. Before dusk, the rain had begun and continued. It wasn't a soft patter on the roof or a calming drizzle. It was relentless, furious, the kind of storm that swallowed sound and blurred vision. By the time Evelyn Marsh's car broke down on the rural highway, she couldn't see more than a few feet ahead. Her hazard lights blinked uselessly into the downpour. The wipers thrashed back and forth, doing nothing. Steam hissed from under the hood. She tried the ignition one more time. Dead. Cursing under her breath, she grabbed her coat from the back seat and stepped out into the storm. The wind slapped her hair into her face. Her boots squelched in the mud off the road's shoulder. There had been no signal on her phone for the last 30 miles, and she hadn't seen another car in over an hour. She squinted through the darkness and saw a faint light deeper into the woods, maybe a quarter-mile off the road. It flickered, then stayed steady. It wasn't headlights. It looked like a house. With no other choice, she started walking toward it. The trees closed around her like curtains. Branches clawed at her coat. Leaves slapped wet against her cheeks. Thunder rolled across the sky, but the light never went out. It was a cold yellow glow, steady through the rain, promising shelter. She stumbled into the clearing 10 minutes later, soaked and shivering. It was a 2-story house, old but standing. Wooden siding, darkened by age. A wraparound porch, half-rotted. No car in the driveway. No mailbox. Not a trace of recent life. However, the light, yes, the light emanated from an upstairs window. She ascended the porch's steps. The damp wood made her boots thud. Although it was closed, the entrance door was not locked. It opened a half-inch when she knocked. Nobody responded. "Hello?" she exclaimed. "Hey, my car broke down." Silence. Slowly, keenly aware of every squeak, she pushed the door open. The house was warmer inside than it was outside. Dust and the scent of ancient wood filled the air. The corridor went on into the night. The light was coming from the second story, which was reached by stairs. She dripped on the flooring as she walked in. Is anyone home? Nothing has changed. She ought to have looked back. Even then, she was aware of that. However, the storm was too strong, and the wind behind her screamed as if it were amused. She shut the door. The house made a low, animal-like groan in the wind. She moved forward and called out once more, but in a gentler tone, like they are scared of waking anything. A room at the end of the upstairs corridor was the source of the light. The banister was sticky with years of filth, and the steps creaked under her weight. She stopped as she got to the top. The corridor, which was lined with locked doors, extended to the left and right. The hall was filled with a golden glow as the lone one at the far end remained open. She moved in its direction. She touched the wall with a moist object. She looked down and flinched. Red, smearing the wall covering, wet as ever. Her breath caught in her throat. She took a step back, but the light pulsed and flickered. She looked forward once more. In the room, a shadow shifted. "Hello?" she said in a whisper. Slowly, slowly, the door creaked wider and wider. There was a bedroom inside. The furniture was covered in dust. The room was illuminated by a single lamp on the nightstand. A clean bed was made. However, the chair by the window was occupied by someone. The figure remained still. "Sir? Ma'am?" Evelyn intervened. "I apologize for interrupting, but There was a squeak in the chair. The person was on her feet. Tall and slender, the man was drenched, even indoors. He felt as though his clothes had not dried for days. His eyes were too dark, and his skin was too pale. Unblinking, he gazed at her. He said, "You should not have come." Evelyn stopped. I did not mean to. I thought my automobile broke down." The man remarked, "They always come on wet evenings." He spoke in a bland tone. "Hollow. They locate the path. They are discovered beside the road. They rap. They come in. Then it starts." "What are you discussing?" Evelyn stepped back. He cocked his head. "Have you not heard them yet?" "Hear what?" He gestured toward the window. "The woods is where they are. Watching." There was a burst of lightning. When Evelyn looked back, she saw them. Figures. Dozens. Perhaps more. Standing at the tree's edge. Unmoving. The black eyes are white. As if they were not there, rain was flowing through them. Her chest pounded with her heart. What is this? They have now following you, the man muttered. That is what they do. While the storm is furious. When the house awakens. The house. He moved past her in the direction of the corridor. You ought to go. However, it will not let you. The light source flickered. All of the hallway's doors suddenly flew open. Bang, bang, boom, boom. Evelyn let out a scream. She turned, but there was no sign of the man. The chair is vacant. It is chilly in the room. The air tightened, the boards shifted, and a low hum rose from the floor as the house started to breathe. Curling up the steps were whispers. She took off running. Down the stairs, down the corridor. The front door loomed, but it was securely closed now. She reached for the knob. It refused to move. The windows were battered by rain. Then, inside the home, she spotted them. Shapes were emerging in the shadows at the foot of the stairs. Long arms, necks that are twisted. No faces, just wide-open, vacant mouths. Her heart thumping, she retreated. You knocked, a voice said behind her ear. You remain now. Her neck was touched. Chilly fingers. The lamp broke above her as she whirled and screamed. It grew dark. The home let out a sigh. Story number 2. The longest rainy night. It had been raining for 9 straight hours when Jonah Keller arrived at the roadside motel. His GPS had failed 20 minutes ago, and he hadn't passed another car or house in miles. The wipers were a blur, unable to keep up. He spotted the flickering neon sign. Valley View Motel. Just in time to make the turn, tires skidding in the gravel. He didn't question why the lights were still on. He just needed somewhere dry, somewhere quiet, somewhere not swallowed in blackness and endless water. The lobby door creaked as he pushed it open. The place smelled like mildew and something older, something sweet and rotten. The front desk stood empty. A dull yellow lamp buzzed overhead. No sound but the dripping of water into a bucket near the wall. Jonah rang the bell on the counter. The chime echoed too long. A moment later, a man emerged from the back room. He wore a white button-down stained at the collar. His skin was pale and waxy, his eyes glassy. But he smiled as if he'd been waiting. Welcome, he said. Rough night. Jonah nodded. My car was hydroplaning like crazy. I didn't want to risk the road any further. Smart. Storm like this, things tend to get strange. Jonah raised an eyebrow. Strange. The man just slid a key across the desk. Metal. No card. No receipt. Room 6, he said. Far end. Heat's working. At least for now. Jonah didn't argue. He was too tired. Too wet. He grabbed the key and walked back outside under the overhang, each footstep splashing in shallow puddles. The wind was howling louder now, and the rain had started to come down sideways. The door to room 6 was already slightly ajar. He paused. The hallway lights flickered, and the storm groaned like it had a voice. But the thought of turning back was worse than stepping forward. He pushed the door open. The room was cleaner than he expected. Old-fashioned. 2 twin beds. A dusty painting of a mountain above the dresser. A small TV bolted into the wall, playing static. The window was closed, but the curtains billowed as if a breeze slipped in from somewhere. Jonah tossed his duffel onto the bed and shut the door behind him. The lock clicked too easily. He turned to the mirror above the dresser and froze. His reflection was smiling, but he wasn't. He stared at himself, breath caught in his throat. The mirror version stood just as he did. Same wet jacket, same tired eyes, but the mouth curled up slowly. Deliberately. A grin he didn't feel at all. He blinked. The reflection returned to normal. Just tired. Hallucinating from the drive. That's all it was. Jonah wiped his face, stripped out of his soaked clothes, and turned on the heater. It rattled loudly, pushing out lukewarm air. As he sat on the edge of the bed, the static on the TV changed. Words formed in the fuzz. Don't sleep here. Jonah stared. The message dissolved a second later. He walked toward the TV, picked up the remote, and shut it off. The silence was worse, oppressive. Something moved outside. He walked to the window and pulled back the curtain. There were people in the parking lot. Dozens of them, all standing in the downpour, unmoving, faces lifted toward his window. Their clothes hung in strips. Their skin was pale gray, almost blue, and their eyes glowed faintly in the dark. He stumbled back from the window, heart racing. When he looked again, they were gone. The lot was empty. He shut the curtain. The wind shrieked like a scream, and the mirror shattered. Jonah flinched, raising his arms as glass scattered everywhere. But there was no sound, no crash. The mirror looked broken, jagged cracks spreading across the surface, but it hadn't fallen. Then something moved behind the glass. Not a reflection. Not him. A figure standing in the corner of the room, where no one was. Black eyes, twisted limbs, and it moved closer. Jonah spun around. Nothing was there. He turned back. The figure was now right behind him in the mirror. He ran to the door, grabbed the handle, and screamed. The doorknob was boiling hot, scalding his hand. He yanked away, skin peeling. Lights in the hallway outside turned red. The TV turned back on. Static again. And then a voice whispered through it. "You should have stayed on the road." The bed began to shake. Violently, the mattress rippled like water, and something underneath it began pressing upward. Fingers, then a face. Someone, or something, trapped inside the bed. Jonah backed into the corner. The floorboards bulged, as if the ground beneath the motel pulsed like a heart. Then the door unlocked itself. Click. He didn't wait. Jonah ran outside into the storm. But the parking lot was different now. Twisted. Wrong. The cars were rusted, broken. Trees grew in impossible angles. The neon sign now read, "Valley Viewed," the final letter flickering between D and R. Something screamed from the roof. He looked up and saw them, clinging to the walls, crawling like insects, dozens of them. Pale bodies, hollow eyes, mouths too wide, heads twitching at impossible speeds. They dropped to the ground. Jonah ran. Through the rain, through the darkness. Past rooms where hands banged on windows, faces slammed against glass. The world twisted as he fled. Hallways that should not exist, staircases that led to nowhere, rain falling upward. Finally, he reached the lobby again. But the man was gone. In his place was a long hallway that hadn't been there before. At the far end stood the man from earlier, but his smile had stretched far beyond human limits. His jaw hung unhinged. His eyes leaked black liquid. He opened his arms. "Welcome back," he said. Behind Jonah, the motel door slammed shut, and the rain began to fall inside. Story number 3. The lengthiest night of rain. It was a wall by midnight because the rain had not stopped since the morning. The kind of rain that floods the mind, drowns sound, and gives the impression that the world is sinking. Carla Mendez could not recall how long she had been behind the wheel. An hour ago, the GPS malfunctioned and kept recalculating. Some time ago, the petrol light had blinked on. The engine then gave a single cough before dying. The windshield was flowing with water. The fog was curling against the glass. And there were just trees on either side of her as she sat by herself on a back road encircled by woods. There was no service on her phone. She gave the ignition another go. Nothing. Simply the click of a dead battery. She pulled the door open. She was immediately soaked by rain. Headlights dimmed as she stepped outside, seemingly bidding farewell. Across the road was a narrow, meandering dirt trail that she had never seen before, cutting through the woods. However, it looked to be waiting. Then the light came to her. Deeper in the trees, a faint blue glimmer. A home? A lantern? There was something. Carla gazed at it. Unlike fire, it did not flicker. It beat, gently. She knew how horror stories started. She'd read them, laughed at the dumb choices characters made. But the rain was too heavy to stay in the car. And something about the light called her. She crossed the road. The trees tightened around her like ribs. The more she traveled, the narrower the trail became. Branches twisted her hair and scraped her coat. The wet earth squished every step. She saw it. A cabin. Not old, not new. Just there. As if it had always been in this forest, waiting for a night like this. The blue light came from a lantern hanging by the door. She approached cautiously. The door stood slightly ajar. Inside, it was silent. "Hello?" she called. Nothing. She stepped inside. Wooden floors creaked beneath her boots. The fireplace was cold. A clock on the wall ticked, but it didn't match the time. 3:12 stuck in a loop, second hand twitching back and forth between ticks. She turned to leave, just as the door slammed shut behind her. She ran to it. Locked. Her breath fogged in the suddenly freezing air. Something was wrong with the light. It no longer glowed blue. It turned white, then red, then black. The clock on the wall stopped. She heard movement upstairs. Creaks. Slow. Deliberate. "Is someone there?" she called. The answer came in the form of footsteps, descending the stairs. But when she looked, no one was there. Yet the footsteps continued. Down the staircase. Onto the floor. Walking toward her. She backed away. The light in the lantern went out. Darkness swallowed the room. She reached for her phone, used the screen as a flashlight. Pale light lit the room in a soft blue again, and then the clock ticked once more. She turned and saw a face in the mirror above the fireplace. Not hers. It stared at her. Unmoving, eyes too wide, smile too sharp, and behind it shadows moved on there. They were not comparable to her. They were not part of anything. Carla whirled away, screaming, but the cabin was different. Where the walls had been, there were now doors. One door opened by itself. "You have already come this far," a voice said from inside. "You might as well check." Running back to the front door, she did so. It is still locked. Then the ticking began once more. Tick, tick, tick. It was not the clock now, though. She had it behind her, approaching, like wood being tapped by nails. As she spun around, she noticed footsteps emerging in the dust. Wet, bare, leading directly to her. An icy green flame roared up from the fireplace, which had ignited itself, and words, etched in deep grooves, started to appear on the walls. "You would always show up. You have been here prior to this. You never left." Her throat tightened each breath. Another door opened on its own. This one depicted descending steps. There was no noise from below. Simply put, something is pulling. Unable to stop herself, she took a step forward. The pull intensified, similar to gravity, similar to memory. The house groaned as soon as her foot touched the first step. A guttural, deep sound, as if it were something ancient and living. Suddenly, dozens of voices sprang up from behind her. "You have returned. You have returned. You have returned." Down the steps she staggered. The basement was a tunnel rather than merely a room. Walls made of earth. Breathing wet. The ceiling was low and rotted. There were still burning candles on the floor. Just a blue glimmer instead of flame, similar to the one that she had pursued. They made a road bright, and something was standing in the gloom ahead. A number, soaked with water. Not a face, just a mess of black teeth and wet hair. Carla stopped. Then it started talking. From everywhere came its voice. From beneath her skin. "You came last. The house is now full once more." The candles extinguished. Behind her, the tunnel fell apart. Then she reappeared. Inside the cabin. However, it had stopped raining. The door stood open. There was no light. Outside is her automobile. Undamaged. The engine is going. She was unable to comprehend. She took off running. Drove off, drenched, trembling, and heart racing. Her phone buzzed a few miles away. Another signal. She dropped it after glancing at the screen. Her lock screen had changed. It was a picture of the cabin. Alongside her, standing in the entrance, smiling. The shadows waved behind her.